You sit in church week after week, embracing the truth of God's word. You believe the gospel and claim Jesus Christ as your Lord. Yet you continue to struggle with pornography. You feel like a hypocrite, returning to the sin you hate that mocks the God you love. You desperately wonder, is lasting freedom even possible? Yes, you can overcome pornography, but not alone. 2 Timothy 2:22 says, "Now flee from youthful lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart." Only by repeatedly running from sin to Christ with other believers can you hope to enjoy lasting freedom. You can live with purity and integrity. Take courage, seek accountability, and do whatever is necessary. Get equipped at accountable2you.com.
Timing. Our military chaplains, did they lead the charge against the fight for COVID?
Some of them.
Vaccines. I hope so.
Some of them.
I hope so. We're about to find out with
that's a good
Colonel
question.
Chaplain Brad Lee coming up here. Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. Our magazine, This America, this issue, This America, Prodigal America, just dropped this quarter, as I said on the show already.
It's a lovely
the very
magazine.
beginning weeks of great.
Lovely.
Steve Dace wrote in it this time, James White, Ben Merkel, David Fowler. I mean, it's on Prodigal America. It's on the topic of our
Wait, did you
conference.
say David Fowler?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Can I see that?
Sure, you sure can.
We have a show to
We
do
have a
right
show to
now.
do. Yeah,
I mean,
Don't be
I got
distracted.
time. I got time.
It's obviously on the theme of our conference in October, so make sure you also
What
go to
page is David? I found
prodigalamerica.com. But what I was going to say before I was rudely interrupted was that if you sign up and you still want this issue, you have to email us. I know it's a second step, but you have to email
David
us.
Reese in here too.
Contact at fightlaughfeast.com. Contact at fightlaughfeast.com and just ask, hey, I signed up. Here's my receipt to get the quarterly
You gotta
magazine.
sign up.
And isn't it good? It's so
Just
good.
chapter 50, idolatrous laws. That just works right in with the show right now. Idolatrous laws.
Yeah,
David
interesting.
Fowler. Come
So
on now.
ask for Prodigal America Magazine. We'll send you a copy for free.
Page
You guys
50.
are aware that we have a new app, right? And are you aware that we're doing a show right now?
Oh, yeah. I'm doing a show too.
Okay, all right, great. Okay.
He's prepping.
If not, you should download the app. We have an app for this show. Head on over to your favorite app store, type in Cross Politics, search Fight Laugh Feast or Pub TV. Once you find the app, you may need to update your old app if you used to have it, or if you have an Android phone,
You need to update it.
They
You definitely
need
need
to-
to go to the
Well,
App Store and you definitely need to re-download everything.
You need to go to the dumpster first. Toss out your...
delete your.
We love you, Android phone people.
That was very sincere.
We love the user, not the phone.
You may need to delete your.
Hate the phone, not the person.
You may need to delete your old app, re-download it. But once you've downloaded it, you'll be able to view or listen to all our shows, past, present, and future. The new app really is pretty sweet.
We've already done some great updates
pretty
on it.
slick.
Yeah,
You can catch all our kind of the highlights, and then of course, if you are a pub member, Fight Laugh Feast pub member, then you also get access to backstage content, special shows, all our conference content, and of course, you also do get discounts at the Fight Laugh Feast conference, Prodigal America, this fall in Fort Worth, Texas. And again, prices are slashed, and if you become a member, you get a discount as well. And we're in the second early bird stage right now. The second early bird. We don't know how many early bird phases there
At
will be.
least 2 if you guys don't act right.
Okay. So fightlaughfeast.com. We're really grateful to have with us now Chaplain Brad Lee. He entered active duty as an Army chaplain in July 1999. He's actually planning to retire in June of this year after 25 and a half years of active duty service. His focus continues to be on the special needs ministry and supporting special needs families. Chaplain Lee's first book, Walking with Caden, A Journey of Faith, Struggle, and Hope, will be published this year. Thank you for coming on the show, Chaplain.
And thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here.
Absolutely. So we understand that you are involved in a court case, Alvarado versus Austin, which has now been appealed to the Supreme Court just recently. Can you explain to us what this case is and
Bring us up to speed.
your involvement with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so originally there were 42 of us. Somebody dubbed us the Brave 42 of all the chaplains in all branches, Army, Navy, and Air Force, that filed suit against Lloyd Austin and the DOD. And by the way, I'm supposed to make this disclaimer. Any comments of mine today are my own and my own opinions and do not represent that of the DOD or the United States Army. So there, I said that.
Okay.
But in any case, we took exception with what I will very definitively say was an unlawful order to begin with the mandate. But secondly, all of us unanimously felt that the implementation and the absolute insistence upon compliance with the mandate was a violation of our constitutional religious freedom. And therefore, at such time, we had no other recourse but to file suit. It was thrown out of a court in Florida because of, I think, jurisdiction. We then went to the court in Arlington, Virginia, federal court. All these are federal courts, by the way. The judge there threw it out right before the COVID mandate was repealed as a result of the FY 2023 National Defense Authorization Act.
Yep.
So it seemed everything was fine, right? The mandate's no longer in effect because the NDAA did away with it. But however, the harms done to individuals' careers, to the rating profiles of those in all branches, were left undone. Even myself, my file went before a general officer board, still having on my official record pending COVID-19 vaccine action. What does that even mean? But that in Army speak, in military speak, that was a clear red flag that anybody sitting on a board, hey, this is one of those guys, whatever that means, dub me a refuser or whatever. So even in my case, I was not given, in my opinion, a fair shot at general officer, even though, very frankly, I'm retiring and very happy to do so. God is leading me into other domains, as you noted, in the special needs community, which I greatly appreciate you putting a plug in for. But as our case continued, we appealed to the appeals court, forget the name number of it, in Richmond, Virginia. And the court there determined that our case was moot. Our case, I submit to you, is not moot. Religious freedom is not a moot point.
That's right.
Period. And so that left us no other recourse but to appeal to the Supreme Court, which, thank the Lord, is considering our case. On the 27th of March, the Department of Defense offered their response to our case, which, again, 50 times, I think 51 times somebody went through and counted, and the 25-page document, the DOD's main defense was, this case is moot, it's irrelevant, the mandate is over, there were no harms, no harm, no foul, let's all move on.
Wow.
But thank the Lord, on April 26th, supposedly, the court, and I forget which justice, I should know this, but an individual justice will consider our case and potentially either A, make a ruling or determine that the entire bench needs to hear the case. So that's where the case stands, kind of in a nutshell, in my not so legalese way of explaining it.
Yeah.
Chaplain, can you, that's really, really helpful, actually. And then gives us something to be praying for, specifically for
April 26th
for this month. I think it would be really helpful. I mean, we've talked about it a lot on the show, but I would love to hear from you. I mean, you said very, very plainly that this mandate was a violation of your constitutional religious rights, and have just reasserted the fact that this is not a moot point at all, because religious liberty is not a moot point. It's never a moot point. Can you connect the dots for us and for our audience? Again, like why is this vaccine mandate a violation of religious rights in particular? How do you connect your Christian faith and biblical convictions to all of this?
Yeah, so I'll start with this. The very hallmark of the chaplaincy, and that is, when I say the chaplaincy, I'm talking about chaplains in all three branches: Navy, Air Force, Marine, or Navy, Air Force, and Army. And for those that don't realize, There are no Marine Corps chaplains. Navy chaplains serve in the Marines. So if you hear of a chaplain in the Marines, that they're talking specifically about a Navy chaplain.
Got it.
But all chaplaincies exist to, in essence, guarantee religious freedom. Now, I'm a Protestant chaplain by nature of my endorsement and ordination, but just like any other officer, which is a very unique role to assume, is to walk the line between being a person of faith and a minister, as well as a officer, just like any and every other officer that is sworn to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That is our charge. That is the hallmark of the chaplain corps. You know, I think early in my career, I thought my calling was to preach Jesus to soldiers. And believe me, I've gotten to do that because of the Constitution and the freedom that I'm allowed, or was allowed at one point, it seems, to execute the duties of my office according to the tenets of my particular faith. And so, for example, we have Muslim chaplains in the Army, and I've known some of them more tangentially, and I know them to be great men of faith in their faith. And their duties, in the same respect, are to ensure the free exercise of religion for all soldiers of all faiths. And I think one of the greatest joys that I've had is to be able to advocate for those who have faiths that are not anywhere like mine. And that is the beauty of our nation, what it was founded upon, on the principle of religious freedom. So let's bring that to COVID then. So the mandate comes in. And I was in a unit in Hawaii at the time that took a very, very rigid stance with the vaccine. I was threatened with in essence being terminated from service outright without even any kind of due process. My commander, a 1-star general at the time, looked at me and said, "Brad, you know, if I may not have any choice but just to cut you out of the service. No due process of what even legally and by regulation was afforded me to even try to retire quickly. That's a different conversation. But in my case, I lived under the threat for that entire time of literally not just being forced to retire, but being eliminated from service. Totally negating at that point about 22, 23 years of military service. So, but what's interesting about being a chaplain is that in the process of the COVID mandate, I was given opportunity to advocate for soldiers who had different faiths, who would come to me, and because of their convictions based upon the tenets of their faith that were not like mine. I think one of the most interesting cases I had he referred to himself as an agnostic humanist. Okay. Now, some people, we could get into a theological debate about that, but the reality is, as an American citizen and as an American soldier, it doesn't matter the title. If that is the faith creed that you uphold and adhere to, you're entitled to the same right as the Catholic soldier or the Pentecostal soldier. And so that is at the very crux of religious freedom as the mandate unfolded in the role that I took as a chaplain to advocate for those that were in those kind of circumstances, that were taking a stance based on their deeply and sincerely held religious beliefs. And what's interesting in that process, there's a court case, and I'll have to look it up, send it to you later. I don't have it in front of me. I wish I did. It was in 1983. It was in the state of Indiana, in which a federal court ruled, and this has never been challenged or overturned. So in other words, this case law is still in effect, but that court ruled that religious beliefs need not make sense to anyone. They don't have to be founded in a document. If they are your deeply held religious beliefs, they merit constitutional protection. And that was part of many of our religious accommodation requests and our appeals. And as you all know, most of those were denied. In fact, not only were they denied, so as you mentioned, I'm a colonel in the Army, which means I've done this a while. There are two of us that are colonels in our case. I found this out later after the mandate had been repealed. both of our initial religious accommodation requests were literally, if you will, pulled from the stack and denied intentionally because we were senior leaders. There used to be a joke, you can't hide an eagle, which is very true. And that's the insignia of the rank that we wear. And not only were our initial religious accommodations denied, but our appeals were denied. And both of those, in both occasions, were denied within 30 days of each other. And that is not a coincidence. So that's kind of, I hope that answers your question. It gives you a little bit of breadth of frankly, what the chaplaincies existed to do, and what we have upheld by oath to the Constitution. The Constitution is not the Bible, and as I just greatly appreciate your introduction and how the messiness of entering into political into a political space. But we as Christians in this country, we're part of a political system, and we have, I think, a responsibility, and I think we have a right as American citizens based upon what we are afforded by the Constitution of the United States to exercise.
Yeah.
So I'll take a deep breath there.
That's good. Yeah, no, that's very, very helpful. Do you own a business and write a lot of proposals? If so, you should check out smartpricingtable.com. Smart Pricing Table cuts down on back and forth, incorporates powerful upsells, and allows you to create proposals at lightning speed. When your prospect is ready, they can e-sign and you're off to the races. Download our free guide, The Profitable Proposal Blueprint, at smartpricingtable.com. Again, that's smartpricingtable.com.
Chaplain, I got a couple questions here listening to you talk.
Yes, sir.
When you started off talking for the first question, you said that there were 42 chaplains that are correct on this case. Are there still 42?
That's a great question. There are now 38 of us. I believe the 4 that stepped out of our case, I think in the case of those 4, 1 or 2 of them retired, and the either 2 or 3 exited military service and did not feel compelled in any way, shape, or form to remain as part of our case. So they didn't. I don't think there's. I think they were from other branches. I know they didn't just quit and give up, but they had really good reason and no regret having stood with us, and no hard feelings on our part of their decision to move on. So I mean, the good news is there's still 38 of us, a majority that are still in active duty or that are still in service. And I should mention this, not only do we represent all branches of the military, but we also represent different branches of service. So for example, I'm active duty, which means full time.
Right.
We also have guardsmen and reservists as well.
Got it.
So I hope that answers your question.
No, it really does. And so the next question, and there's another one after this too, is, has there been another time, first of all, the number's going the wrong way. I would have thought you said now we have 90 or 150 because obviously we've been proven right. I was hoping that people are saying, man, I wish I would have stood with those 42 in the beginning. So going the wrong way, I think, in one sense. So has there ever been this many chaplains engaged this way towards a group, towards an entity that they serve so strongly historically?
Wow, that is a really great question. I think the word that comes to my mind as you were asking that, and is kind of the weight of that question, really sends chills up my spine. I think the word I would choose is unprecedented. I don't know of a time in our history in which that many chaplains from all branches and all components, again, reserve, guard, active, have come together for such a time as this, and for such a purpose. Now, we're not the first group of chaplains per se to sue the DOD. There have been individual chaplains who have sued. For example, I actually have a chaplain in under my purview as I leave active duty service, who's a rabbi who successfully sued the DOD as, I think, the first chaplain to wear a beard as a matter of religious accommodation. And he's still serving, thankfully. And to your point, it is surprising that there have not been more that have joined our ranks. Unfortunately, this issue, if I can comment on this too, what it was very sad to me is, frankly, how many and I use this term maybe loosely, but how many friends and really close acquaintances that I frankly lost in this that said to me, I think you've gone too far. And I thought to my response to that, I wish I was smart enough at the time to say this, but I've since thought, I've talked to other people, not chaplains, who've said, well, maybe you took the whole standing up to the mandate a little far and, suing the government. But it's like, well, really, did those who threw tea in the Boston Harbor take it too far as well? Hey, maybe we should give the Brits another chance. I mean, let's not get too crazy here. The framers of our Constitution, did they take it too far, standing up to a tyrannical government?
Britain thought so.
Yeah, Britain thought so, exactly. So, for such a time as this, this is just another occasion in our history, in my mind, that is called men of faith to come together, men and women of faith. I think we did have a female chaplain. I think she since exited our case. So it's all men at this juncture. But it's times like this that call us to action, to stand up for something that's frankly worth hanging. For me, I literally hung my career on this fight.
That's really helpful. Mm-hmm. And I have one more question in context with this, because as you were talking earlier and you were because I had a question on here, like, what is the importance of the chaplain to the military, right? And you answer that question. And the thing that came to my mind was, you guys in one way or another are the canaries inside of the coal mine. And so, and it seems like instead of saying, oh my goodness, the canary's choking, they're like, quick, let's get the bag and put over its head. That's what it seems like they've done. Let's make sure we help it die faster. And so with that the case though, then for you, seeing that's the reality, what does all of this mean for the military, and then later after that for the rest of America, if you guys are getting choked out?
Brother, that question fires me up. And I just got to tell your audience, it hit me about an hour before we began recording. I have no idea what these guys are going to ask me. So this is not a preheated question, and this is not a preheated response. But let me tell you and your listeners something. This fundamental issue of religious freedom is such that, early on in the mandate, my commander would say things like this. And I had a company commander that took issue with me. And they would say things like this, this isn't anything personal. This is all, let's keep this all professional. That's malarkey. Because when you ask any soldier, whether they're a chaplain or not, to raise their right hand and to defend the Constitution of the United States at any cost, to include their death, that is a personal decision. That is not just a matter of it being, quote, professional. Because when soldiers go into harm's way into a battle, when the bullets start flying, I've never seen any of them be able to say, well, you know what, I'm just going to be a professional and this is too much for me, I'm walking away. It's nothing personal. Yeah. That's an incredibly personal decision that which we choose to put our lives on the line, and ultimately even to sacrifice ourselves for the freedom of the American people in defense of the Constitution. And here's the other angle of that is this, and that is, if I've argued this, that if we lose this battle of religious freedom, even in the Supreme Court, it sets a precedent that scares the daylights out of me for those who remain in service. And you talked about being quieted. There are those, like I said, that think we went too far, that think that we were out of line. But if we are not the ones to purport that constitutional right, and here's an example of what I mean by that. I had a conversation with my own JAG in my unit. I won't give their name. I'm not going to throw them under the bus. But I had a conversation, and it was actually a pretty healthy conversation. We agreed to disagree, but they said this to me. They believe that we give up freedoms, that we give up our personal freedoms in order to serve in the military. Now, listen to this carefully. And I mean specifically those listening. Military members give up a lot of personal freedom. Let me back up. this JAG, which is the Judge Advocate General, that's basically a lawyer. So I'm having this conversation with a lawyer about this issue. And the first thing that I would say is we talked about separation of church and state. And I said, well, where is that in the Constitution? And they said, well, I'd have to go back and read it. And I said, yeah, you better go back and read it, because if you have to go back and find where it's at in the Constitution, you're not going to find that phrase. That phrase is in Thomas Jefferson's writings. It's a principle. And it doesn't mean that the church is somehow off in a corner. It means that the state can't tell the church how to operate.
Right.
That's what it really means. And you guys are free to comment and set me straight there.
Well, amen. Go ahead.
Amen.
They said this, though, that really bothered me, that we as soldiers give up our rights as soldiers. And again, I apologize, I botched that. But think about this, the difference between a freedom and a right. I, as a soldier, have given up personal freedoms for a number of years. I've not had the freedom on exactly where to choose where I live, on how to wear my hair, on what clothes to wear every day. Those are personal freedoms and choices that most people don't really think about, that as a member of the military, you really do give up a certain sense of freedom. We do not, absolutely unequivocally do not give up constitutional rights in serving our country.
Yeah.
And I can't say that emphatically enough. And that is what's part of the argument in response to your question that is at stake in this case and in the context of the military, that if you keep putting, as you said, the bag over the canary's head, we will lose not only personal freedoms, but we will lose personal rights. And guess what? I've said, the military is what? A microcosm of society?
Oh.
Guess what? If we lose those rights in the military, what prevents that from spreading to the rest of our culture and our country to begin with? That you can already see this happen in many respects.
Chaplain,
Wow.
It seems to me that whatever happened with COVID, that there were things upstream from that.
Man, I was thinking the same thing.
That we
Go
did
ahead. That's good.
that we did not fight. And then we got to COVID.
Yeah.
And we decided,
Earlier.
earlier, upstream.
Yeah.
That we did not fight. And then we get to COVID, and then all of a sudden we start fighting. I mean, I can think of, trans in the military.
Yeah.
That was one area where I don't think any chaplain spoke up about that I know of. There might have been one who got released from the military for speaking up about that.
Yeah.
So that would be an area. What upstream was going on that maybe we should have been picking battles already? To now we get to the COVID stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, we've been pushing over the chaplains for decades. Yeah. They're going to buckle here.
Tighten that bag up,
right? Right.
Yeah. Wow, what a great question again. And as you were asking that question, I think back to when the current administration came into office. Within, I believe, 2 months in, you could go back and fact check this, but I remember in February or March of, I believe, 2021, there was extremism training that was executed within the context of military. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. I got PowerPoint slides. People were feeding me PowerPoint slides.
Remember that.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, in my mind, I remember my commander, and my commander was a believer. And again, even despite the disagreement and the quite, demarcation line between us with the mandate, we could have another conversation about that. But I remember him struggling with, how am I going to approach this? And he said, Chaplain, will you help have the discussion on part of this? And I struggled with, okay, what exactly am I going to talk about in extremism? But what I walked away with, and I'll never forget, we had the training, the commanding general got up and he spoke to the staff and the unit, and then he had me speak. And guess what I spoke on? Religious freedom. And what I really gave to people was the idea that if you're struggling with, some element of this, you can come talk to me in confidence. That's protected by regulation. That's privileged communication is protected by regulation. To be honest, I kind of skirted it, but after me was the JAG, again, the lawyer who explained different things about extremist groups to which I think many of us in the room and even sensitive scratched our heads going, what was that all about? And what precedent did that set, as you say, upstream, to set in place this idea that if you go against the mainstream, well, maybe you might be, considered, you might be a bit of an extremist.
Right.
And if you look at those who stood against the mandate, who have been kicked out of the military outright or that left, who are the majority of those folks? Those who have, I would say this as a chaplain, deeply, sincerely held religious beliefs. And so I think the two are not, they're not coincidental, as you call it, upstream.
Chaplain, what apart from obviously praying for this, which is obviously a huge thing. I mean, we ought to be really.
There's a lot of cases, court cases right now going around.
Asking the Lord to turn the hearts of these judges. At the same time, are there other things that people can be doing that are helpful to your case? I mean, are there ways that that we can be an encouragement to you and to others who have similar cases? Are there ways that we can support what you all are doing?
Wow, that's a very humbling question that you ask, and I appreciate that. I mean, first and foremost is to pray for our nation and our leaders. I mean, obviously we're in an election year. There's a lot riding on that. But I think, what we as chaplains do, what we represent specifically to your question, pray the Lord of the harvest to send workers into the field, because we need chaplains that have backbone. And unfortunately, there are guys, I mean, believe it or not, I'm an old guy, in Army speak. Yeah. I turned 54 in March, which isn't that old, but I've done this for 25 years and it's time for me to go do other things. But, if we don't have people that continue to stand, and back to your other question about why aren't there more of us? I think what's an interesting thing that's happening, and to pray for those that remain. And to pay attention to those who remain, because I have said this to subordinates and those who, even though they didn't want to take the vaccine, that felt pressure to do so, that my mind and heart is flooded right now with the personal knowledge of those, some in my footprint of responsibility, not currently, but previously, that are vaccine injured. That did not feel compelled to stand, but had a lot of misgivings about it. But I mean, there are guys that felt that they were protecting their ministry and sacrificing themselves by taking the vaccine, and we all had to make a very personal decision to do that. But I've said this to many those who will listen and tolerate me: there will be another time for people to stand. Chaplain Lee may be retiring, but believe me, there will be another occasion, and I got a feeling it's going to be sooner than later, in which you will be called upon to stand for your faith and to stand firm. And so, again, that upstream piece of things set into place that, whether it's another mandate or whether it's whatever that is, it's coming. And I think that aligns with the heart of man is evil. That aligns with biblical truth, and there are just going to be things that come down the pike that we go, wow, where did that come from? But big surprise, right? And so pray for those. But I would say, pay attention. There's so many things, like you guys, I'm sure have been called conspiracists too. I know I have. And 2-3 years later, we're going, oh, maybe there was something to that. Yeah. It's just amazing to me how our society has been brainwashed in some ways, but yet there are people and thankfully that are beginning to ask questions, maybe a little late, but at least they're asking them. Yep. So continue to ask those questions. Don't take the first report as the gospel truth. Ask some questions about it. Yeah, that's great. And pray for our eyes to be open to the truth. So I could pontificate about that, but that's
really good.
It's always good to have a preacher on the show.
Well, another one.
Preacher.
Yeah, Chaplain Lee, thank you so much for joining us on Cross Politics. Appreciate you very much. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids, and if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Crisscross Politics.